All right, so I think we're going to get started. So first of all, I just want to say to everyone on the call, Happy New Year to everyone. This is our January meeting for the Information Governance and E-Discovery Group. As you know, I'm Gary Logan, the chair. We only have a few more sessions. We have February and March. April coming up this year is the exchange meeting. So if you are not familiar with that, it's a yearly conference. And KJ, you could probably explain a little bit more, but Exchange is a yearly conference for ACC. And it's a great way to learn more about different topics, not only just in legal operations and in this interest group, but other things as well. So definitely check that out. I believe it's in Chicago this year, but knowing with the COVID pandemic, it may be virtual again. I'm not sure.
No, we're planning to have it in Chicago, but we're also reading the tea leaves. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
The hope is it's in Chicago this year and not virtual. So we definitely want to meet in person again. So definitely check that out. And my co-chair, Jack, is here. And one of the topics we just wanted to go over is, you know, the different software companies that are driving information governance and what some of the trends that we've seen. And Jack is going to lead that discussion. Just a couple of things before we do begin. I just do want to say thank you for those who have been attending the sessions. If you have any other topics that you would like to discuss in this interest group, please feel free. We have been looking to collaborate with other groups on certain things, bring in guest speakers. So if you do know anybody or anything regarding information governance, e-discovery you want to discuss, other than what the topics that we have, just let us know. We're happy to look at them and work with you so we can get some topics going. Because this interest group is for not only for us to make sure that we get you the topics that you need, but to talk about and collaborate on different topics around in the different industries. Jack and I are from the pharma industry, but we look at information governance and e-discovery one way, and then other industries may look at things a little bit differently. So please, any further topics, just let us know. And Jack, I don't want to steal your thunder, so feel free to you know, go over some of the things that you wanted to discuss today.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. So one of the things that has been coming up lately in the world of, I guess you could say, e-discovery, information governance, human records management, is how our service providers and platform providers in the software industry or services industry are essentially either listening to us in terms of telling them our requirements or dictating how we should be in order for us to use their platforms. Not sure how many folks use Relativity, either their in-house search rather than outside search, which does present a huge challenge because there's a lot of data. Or to some degree, Microsoft, in terms of, you know, how the E5 capabilities work. But really, it's more or less like, is that really the right thing for me? And does my business models, you know, support it, or can I support it? And so forth. So I mean, I've had a couple encounters where I'm like, well, are you actually listening to clients? Because that's not really how it works. It may work for one company, but it doesn't work for all. And so how does that roadmap really work for everyone? Versus just a marketing person saying, well, you should be doing it. I'm like, no, I shouldn't be doing anything you tell me. I should just simply tell you what I need and how can we best collaborate on the best way your program or platform is going to work. So before I go into my horror stories, I'm wondering if anyone has come across or felt that we're getting a little bit of pressure from companies to really adjust to their model versus being a client or voice the client. And this is a cone of trust. By all means, please feel free to share. the point is really to like come back with a very good response. And not just against Relativity or Microsoft, because there's nothing we're doing there, but nevertheless, sometimes roadmaps or providers are just not listening, and presents a huge problem, especially if they go talk to IT, not to legal. And then legal's forced to do something that, well, we didn't approve this. This is not how we need to work. It's kind of against the law, or what we perceive to be the law. It really doesn't get the business requirements down. Thoughts, feelings?
I could go first, Jack. I think you bring up an interesting topic because at Takeda, I run an archival service under legal operations. And one of the things that just in software vendors and just supporting stakeholders in general, the question is a lot of times, does technology really driving the process, or is the process really driving the technology? And everyone has a different viewpoint about that. The vendor has, okay, we have this technology, let's make it so that it drives sometimes the process, where in actuality, the process is really supposed to drive the technology, but technology is changing so rapidly and there's so much competition out there. It's not easy. So does anyone have any other thoughts about this? Because, it does come up and definitely when I speak with stakeholders and software vendors, especially managing records and information.
Maybe to go one step further, if they don't have, if anyone doesn't have any direct comments from a vendor doing this, is anyone getting any pressure from IT or another organization within your organization to really push the roadmap without getting like the legal voice or the operational voice?
Hi, this is Sue Koch at Merck.
So,
Until January of this year, I was in IT. And I was the client services lead supporting legal, among a few other areas. Now I'm part of the legal operations team.
Okay.
And I will say, in an organization the size of Merck, there's definitely pressure to align on enterprise standards, especially in information governance and information management space, because it's seen as a commodity. And it's very difficult, having been in this position, of having to justify why the needs in legal in particular are a little different and why that enterprise tool does not fully meet their needs. So there's definitely a hard push there. I will say Merck has had a very robust e-discovery team in place for 17 plus years. And there is a tight partnership. In fact, right now, the e-discovery team plus the client service responsibility reports up into the same director, who reports up into the CISO for information risk management and compliance. So as a result, there is a partnership there, but there's definitely gotchas. Things that were anticipated, we're rolling this out, we've done some testing, we've had some conversations with legal, and then as we start socializing it, there's more opinions, right? Because legal is not one person, and therefore there's lots more than one opinion. And so that sometimes can really derail things, because you don't get one universal voice. Doesn't matter who you talk to, legal or compliance, or even someone out in the research laboratories. They all speak from their unique experience, and maybe it's particular to their country or their site or whatever, but
right.
There's lots of different needs, and sometimes you have to accept that you can't meet all the needs, and so you're going to have to prioritize what's going to meet 80% of the needs, and that's going to have to be good enough, and that never makes anybody happy.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right. They want one harmonized approach. No, thanks for sharing. So definitely the global and local aspect as well. Definitely in Takeda, we have the same kind of thing.
We have it too. So do you work with Joanne Lane?
Yes. Joanne was until December 31st was my manager.
Oh, okay.
So now I actually report into Katie Fadows, who is also on the call, who heads up the legal operations area and legal administration.
Hi, Katie. Nice to meet you.
So in the same vein, and I'm sorry, unless anyone has any further comments. In a legal ops side, I think we're, and also not to ever besmirch IT too much. I was in IT myself for a long time. I understand the pushes and pulls, and usually you can find a good common ground. And I think the reference I was trying to get to is, I think as outside providers are coming into the market, where they are trying to drive the technology, but they're not going to the right people per se, and really not investing in the business unit. That's really the one that's responsible for maintaining the workflow processes. And I will say it almost to a point to say, like, I'll use relativity as an example. Relativity is introducing Rel 1, which is basically relativity in the cloud. But their core purpose is basically to introduce the cloud model versus an on-prem model, which is very appealing to a lot of IT individuals who want to push to a cloud environment. At least that's the consensus across through many boards in the market, but which is all good. But there are other implications that don't necessarily always agree to say, okay, let's just stop doing everything we're doing and move to a cloud, when we've already invested in one type of business model, and moving away from it is very difficult. So your roadmap isn't achievable on our end, not at the immediate time. And if it's just to make a sale, well, that's really kind of not allowing your clients to really explore the option very thoroughly, make sure it's the right need. So I've encountered that quite often. And I'm wondering if anyone else has had something very similar happen, or if anyone else in the organization has seen it your way. So you brought up a very good model of, like, sometimes IT is the first person a vendor will go to present their roadmap, but you do represent both the organization as well as your business unit that you're supporting quite well, and say, no, we just can't do this. So you're talking to the wrong person, or you're trying to drive me when I can't be driven. So I'm just curious if anyone else has been in a similar situation, or has anyone gotten any, threatening emails from vendors saying, why aren't you using us? You're just doing yourself a disservice. I'm like, no, you're disservicing me by constantly harassing me. But anyone else go through something like that, or want to share it? Anyone?
Hi, this is Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I may have some experience with that. I was at Deloitte for quite a while before I moved to my current role with Beijing, which is a pharmaceutical company. And when I was at Deloitte, we were using all kinds of different softwares like Clearwell, Concilio, like, the older versions. And then we started to kind of only offer relativity. And then, during the recent years, when I introduced the cloud version, and then we started to add that to our service. But I can imagine this is going to be very challenging implementation for any person that going through the transition. Even for us, like, we are teams of consultants, we struggle with our own new software, and then there's always hiccups, there's like issues that we need to fix. So even though that we know that we need to change, but there's still a lot of pushback, and then people doesn't really like it. So I can definitely see that happens with any company. So when I moved to this role last year, I was here just over a year by now. When we were looking at new vendor for e-discovery solution, I made sure that we chose the cloud version so that we don't need to go through any transitioning. That's kind of the, the future of all the platforms that you have to be on the cloud. And to make sure that we don't need to go through very painful upgrades, because it just upgrades all by itself. So yeah, that's like, I am lucky because for my company, it's still newer for the e-discovery solution. So we were able to pick the one that can be used for a while. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You're actually lucky.
I actually was wondering, sorry, did I cut someone off?
That's okay. I'll go in a second. It's Dora Ramos from Advance.
Okay. So I was wondering, before, and I see, how Deloitte does it, or how the clients that I worked with before, they always segregate the duty between, sending out legal hold and actually do the collections. I'm seeing some challenge here, like from IT team, that they're pushing back and they don't want to do the collections and they want the legal ops to do the collections. And then we will be like issuing legal hold and we collect it ourselves and then we send it to other people. Like there is still segregation of duty from what I'm seeing. And also on top of that, I feel like collections should be under IT. So I don't know like how your companies are doing on this.
I could show you mine really quick. I have a partnership with IT that they did the collections, but we initiated the holds and so forth and administer the preservations. But IT recently told me that they can no longer support it. So it moved into operations back to me. So I outsourced it. I outsourced collections to our e-discovery provider. And
Gotcha.
yeah.
And so you gave them the access to be able to do the collection, right?
Yeah.
And then, okay. How has that, go ahead.
No, we were really lucky. We actually hired, I had the IT tech who was a contractor doing the collections. I had him hired by my e-discovery provider. So it was sort of the same person doing the same job, just different companies. So it worked out very well.
Oh, nice.
So I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, I was wondering how has the experience been, but sounds like it worked out for you guys.
Yeah, it did. Knock on wood.
Is there any, so like, sorry, just one follow-up. So e-discovery can be very expensive, right? So
Yeah.
on top of all you have done already, like collection, review, productions, and then when you outsource it to someone else for collections, was there any pushback about the budget, like anything around that?
The biggest pushback from the cost perspective was, well, you could either send it to a provider where we have set rates, or we can let the law firm do it. And when you saw the financials of what the law firm would have charged versus what a provider would have charged, you definitely see the difference. Or call out the law firm to say you're only going to use the same provider, but add more fees to it. So that is the best argument to say this is the best way we could justify the spend, versus doing it in-house, which depending upon what your size is and capabilities, that's always a tricky question, because you basically have to do an ROI internally. Right now, I can only do small cases where it's like one custodian and less than a certain gigabyte threshold in order to justify it. Otherwise, I have no other time or capabilities. But there are companies that do have there are other pharmaceutical companies that do have in-house. Bayer is a very good example.
Yeah.
They do everything in-house, with the exception of some outside counsel. And there are other pharmaceutical, Merck actually, I believe most of outside counsel does their work. And so I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, but I just know from Joanne that a lot of it goes through outside counsel, which is fine. There's usually good rates that you can get. The world has changed dramatically in the past couple of years, so I would say it's going to be expensive, but it's really who's going to cost the least is the best way I could say.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for the insight.
Okay. Oh, and Dora, you had something to share? Apologies.
Oh, no worries. My whole thing, we've a protracted grisly little story over here at Advance because we were an outside captive law firm till not too long ago, and they brought all of the people who were at the captive law firm in to be lawyers and paralegals and whatever within the Advance, which we're a media company, and we have a lot of very unfederated operating companies that are working with us. So we came in from being a captive law firm where we had our own network and we had our own infrastructure and we had our own vendors and whatever it is. And we became part of an organization that had a very wonky, very segmented, balkanized network of technology. So we come in and we're thinking we want to like do our own collections at this point. And of course, they wouldn't let us do any of that. They wouldn't give us the keys to any compliance center kingdom that we could ever ask for. It just wasn't a thing. So we find ourselves now 2.5 years into doing this, wanting to get our own e-discovery vendor because, like you said, the ROI on getting it done internally versus getting a vendor to do it is decidedly different. But to address your first question, I find that cloud-based offerings and platforms work better for us than having to go through anything that is in-house technology is curating it for us. We don't have any visibility into what it is that they're doing. If we ask them to do a hold for us, maybe it's happening, maybe it's not really sure. We send out everything and we have on it legal holds for our legal hold platform. It sends out all of the everything that you need to implement a hold and acknowledgements and everything else, but we have no visibility whatsoever into the back end data. So I don't know whether it can be rehydrated. I don't know what form it's in. We don't know anything about it. Whereas we used to be able to do that, now we can't. So we're at the point now where when we're looking for somebody, we think that cloud-based is really working for us because they will be beholden to us to actually make sure that what we've asked for is done. It will be done defensively, hopefully, and as economically as possible. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know that like within our four walls, we're at the point now where we really are looking for saying a turnkey solution for e-discovery. That we can own and implement across many different operating companies that we have. So from our perspective, we're in a unique position because we can get cloud-based that would work for us. We're not replacing anything, in fact. The only problem is that, of course, the RFP that we're going to be doing for it is going to be very difficult to come up with. But I think what we're going to try to do is get a vendor in place that we can then farm out to outside counsel when we get to that point to say, you use our people, we have certain rates, we have an MSA with them, we could do whatever it is that we want to do and you follow suit. And I think that that's going to be what we end up doing. But the idea of being able to log into a platform and actually see holds and see data and be able to manipulate it or do whatever is so incredibly lovely right now to even think about being able to do that. That's where we find ourselves, and our biggest, most fervent wish is to get there. So this is very helpful for us to know that, at some point we might get there, and that we've had on it now for a couple of years. On it, if you're not familiar with it, has many different modules, and one of them is e-billing. What I find with certain software platforms these days is some things don't work very well, and you go to them and you say, this isn't working very well for us, and basically you get crickets. And that is totally new to me in this space. I've worked in technology for 35, 40 years, and I've never had a vendor basically say, oh, well, that's becoming more pervasive. So one of the things that happens with their e-billing platform is that you could do wires in bulk, but then the vendor has no idea what they were wired money for.
Yeah.
And basically, their answer was, no, we don't have that technology, so sorry. And that leaves you scrambling to find what invoices were underlying that wire transfer. So I don't know. I mean, we hope to get to a place with e-discovery where it really does suit our needs. But I find that, going through dev and user acceptance testing and everything that you have to do to come up on your own with every case scenario that might trip up a system it's crazy.
Oh, it's bananas. I know. If you ever really want to go down that road, I'm very familiar with Onnit. I have my own opinions. I think their concept is great. I just think that there's some practicalities that have not been really worked out yet.
It never really, I'm not going to throw them under the bus because, but we've gotten a number of modules. Some of them work, some of them don't. Some of them were ill-conceived for our, like I said, if you, for the contract module, if you only make widgets and you only have one template for widget making, it's great.
Perfect, yeah.
But if you have 100 different templates based on, what it is that your media client is doing today, it is an epic fail.
Yep. No, agreed. FYI, if you ever want to talk about it's approved, we're using them for legal hold and in-house some capabilities for e-discovery. I'm happy to talk to you offline about that.
Oh, great. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We went through an RFP for that about 3 years ago, and I work for a French company, and getting anything done in 3 years is quite amazing. So we ran the gamut of who was popular 3 years ago. We saw some price points. We saw some who wants to move in right away and who wants to just set up shop and leave you alone. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. But I think it goes to the whole conversation of, will a provider in any sense of the word that's a software or platform provider, what level of flexibility do you have with them, and do they force their roadmap to you, or do you have the capability of saying, no, I'm gonna have to do this on my own timetable because I need to figure out what we need before you tell us what we need?
I'm finding these days that a lot of providers, either they're not sharing their roadmaps, or their roadmaps are ephemeral. They're not necessarily, set in stone and with an end date, beginning, middle, and an end. That's what I find anyway. It used to be that you would really get.
Yeah.
It'll be the next version.
Yeah. Or, no, we can't do that right now. And there's that second part of the sentence, which is, but it's on the roadmap and will be completed by Q3. I don't see that so much anymore.
Yeah, agreed. I miss 10 years ago when you can go to, Time Metrics or Walters Kluwer or whoever they were at the time and just simply say, what's the roadmap? And they tell you. And it was like, oh, you're going to have that new billing feature available in next year. Great. Can't wait to see it. And then sometimes it showed up, sometimes it didn't. But I think
now it's a very closely guarded secret what the roadmap is. And it's not necessarily something that is followed.
Yeah. It's amazing. Anyway, well, we could trash talk if you really want to.
No, I think I'm done. I just wanted to share with you guys. So we're in a unique position. So I understand that, not everybody is ready to pull the trigger on doing things in a way that we are. We had nothing. So, we're in a good place to be able to get new things. But the state of the industry at this point, I'm feeling like there's always a tug of war between operations and technology. It's unreal how much, you're feeling like it's in their bucket or your bucket. Whose bucket is it in? I'm not really sure. But then to throw the vendor on top of it, it gets very hard. Who owns that relationship? All sorts of things that make it a strange dynamic.
Yeah. And to me, the funny thing is, I think the pandemic has changed some of this thinking now, because now everybody wants to go more digital, and now we're very specific of what we want. And then, the vendors have to adjust. I mean, when I did audits for IT vendors under quality, it was just amazing that they said, oh yes, we don't worry about, there was one, I think a learning management system. They said, oh, the pharma industry is about 10% of our business. So, they probably just ignored all those use cases of coming in from that industry because they're focused on the other 90% of their business. So again, their roadmap was probably entirely different, but then they wanted to use it a certain way. So it's to me, it's not easy.
And I think that right now vendors are doing more than one thing. Like their offerings are more diverse. Like in something with On It, you do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We cobble together this solution. We bring in Billing Point. We bring in Bodala. We can do these analytics for you. We can do all of these different things, and they build these silos that might have been really good on an individual level, but when you bring it all together, it needs to work together. So, I mean, they're not just doing one thing anymore, these vendors. They're really trying to make what it is that they're building do so much more. And I find that even with some of the e-discovery vendors that we were looking at, it's not just the sort of garden variety e-discovery thing that you have to do. They want to have the analytics and the metrics and like all sorts of other parts of it that might not have been something they built, but is now part of their solution, and take it or leave it.
Good point. Good point.
No, I mean, so in my department in records information management, we've been asked to support the business on, some of their RFPs for implementing systems, and, they have certain requirements, and we provide guidance on what we see, and some of them have it, some of them don't. So it's just a real interesting process to go through, and just, what are some of the things that you absolutely need and want, and what are some of the things you may have to find an interim solution for, unless the next version, right? I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah, and that speaks to what Sue was saying. It's lots of opinions, lots of people that you need to keep happy.
For sure.
So operation happy group.
Hey Gary, I heard, so I heard you're in the record or retention, in that group. Can I ask you a question, like how you guys do this, or maybe you can let me know what do you think could be the best practice? So we are implementing our record or retention policy. We have it one way, which is, just set the retention policy of like across the board, the same thing, like in different categories, but each category for everyone in this department, that department, we are all the same. But now I'm in talks with IT, and our head of litigation, and they kind of want to implement different retention policies for, let's say, SharePoint or the Teams chat, because the Teams chat seems like some people are, have a lot of important conversations over Teams chat instead of an email. And then we are trying to think like, what's the best way to, keep us that? Like, what do you think?
Oh, Jack is smiling.
I saw that.
I mean, it's not an easy one. I mean, to me, you always got to come down to the basics and foundation. What is a record? What is not a record? What is the intent? You got to assess and analyze how it's being used as well. You know, do you have controls on it to do certain things, or is it an open thing where you do everything? And then, you know, provide some guidance on it, on, you know, on what that is. So, and work with legal counsel on that, because, you know, some of it could be an official record, for example, if you use it a certain way, and some may just be information. So do you really want to keep the information for that long, or is it an official record at a certain point? So, and Jack, we've talked about this one before too. What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
My personal thought, get rid of it. Just don't keep it.
Yeah.
So Gary's right. You have to make the philosophical decision. Is it a record? Is it not a record? And then you have to adjust all your policies according to that statement. So your legal holds notices, your IT info governance policies, all your mobile device policies, anything where any type of transitory versus non-transitory information exists, all those have to be updated. But ideally in the team chat, we just went from 24 hours to 60 days.
4 hours?
24 hours.
Really? Wow.
Well, the purpose of it was, no, if you're using a Teams chat, you are basically IMing, and the message is not a record. However, we had lots of stakeholders that said, well, I communicated everything in a Teams chat, and in the legal department, and as an e-discovery person, I'm secretly crying in the corner. So we had to make a decision that's best suited for capturing that information.
Yeah.
But the purpose of it was, okay, we'll retain it for 60 days, provided we can get at it if it's put under legal hold. And that was the sole driving purpose of why legal actually bought into the retention of 60 days. Beyond that, it was like, I don't care. I'm not doing this for the business. I could care less if they keep their records, because they don't know what a record is, nor will they ever care. So that was very pragmatic and said, all right, we'll keep it for this long, provided you can save it for me if the person was under legal hold. And then that was the driving factor, and it was accomplished. Granted, Teams is a nightmare to work with, but nevertheless, that's how the decision was made. So that's it.
Yes, and for me, you know, before my role in RIM and legal operations, I used to be in quality for 7.5 years in the pharma industry. So my always approach was risk-based approach. I love that approach, just because to look at the risk and impact of what you evaluated, right? Now, the only thing now with this archival service I run is that it's expanded. Now I have to look at the legal risk, privacy risk, and security risk, you know, and the business risk around the data and the records, right? So all those type of risks I kind of look at when I look at this, because I maintain all the historic data in archives. So, you know, looking at all the different functions, business units around with that type of records, that's kind of what I kind of look at. So our archival service adheres to those policies, but I would want to make sure those records also adhere to those policies, what you do and how you do with privacy, security, legal, quality, and do that, because that would be your best based decision on how long you need to keep it, not only with the regulations with the retention schedule that you provide, but also just a sound-based decision-making approach based on that.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you. That was helpful.
Oh, you're welcome. No, thank you for sharing, because the one thing that I like about this group is that it's all different industries as well, because, you know, pharma has a lot of these regulations, you know, especially in the role I'm in now. I feel like one day I'm in quality, another day I'm in legal, because you have to adjust. But certain industries may not have to worry about some of that. You know, there's the GXP relevance, et cetera. So, you know, but you still got to look at risk around, you know, what you're doing, and also the region of where the data is residing in, because now with all these privacy regulations coming up and where they're located, some countries have localization requirements. It's not only a map of your data, but where is your data located? is coming into play. So
China just changed recently last year their privacy rules for getting access to data. So from InfoGov as well as eDiscovery, it's sort of like, all right, if you're outside the country, you have limited access for any type of litigation where you have to produce. It's just not possible without a severe set of circumstances and several different rules in place. I'm still trying to figure them out, to be honest with you. And I'm dealing with a Hong Kong arbitration. It's a little tricky. So.
And one of the things I've been thinking about, if you're doing an RFP with systems, when I took over this role, I was an archival service. The system was already in place. But if I was doing an RFP, I would kind of look at now of, okay, what am I actually going to be using that for? And then look at privacy, some of that, like the privacy assessment early, and kind of plan on that just to make sure that, okay, what am I actually dealing with the software? This is what I want the software to do based on my process. But what are my policies that I have, right? And knowing those requirements, and then going into the RFP, knowing that in the back of my mind, to me would help.
That's actually a very good point, Gary, because, going back to the original conversations about, vendors driving the conversation, one thing that I've come across that stumped a few is like, oh yeah, we can do this. I'm like, okay, do you have servers in Europe? And I get it. Oh no, we don't. I'm like, I can't use you because I need hosting in Europe for GDPR compliance. Oh, we can set up an AWS. I'm like, no. That's nice for an operational perspective, but that does not necessarily comply with every GDPR component and the data sets that I'm using. So,
right.
No, and get up. Well, you currently don't understand it. I'm like, hold up. Let me explain to you what GDPR is and what kind of business I'm in and what types of data I'm typically dealing with. And your roadmap or your initiatives to sell me your product does not conform. And here's why.
Right.
So here's a clear reason why. And it's very shocking that they get stumped on that. Like,
right. And the software vendors I audited, they don't look at any regulations at all, right? Because their concern is making money in that industry to sell you the software. When I do an audit, I look at regulations of a vendor of what we can have in the farm industry, or when I used to do audits. I don't do them anymore. But then, then when I do the final meeting, they like, oh, really? We didn't know that. So, they just want us, they have a use case to do, they do the sprint or whatever, and they put it in the software. But they don't realize the ramifications of any regulatory things because they want to make sure they make the money. And depending on the roadmap, the farm industry may be 10% instead of 90. So, that's what the vendor's thinking. But, if I was a software vendor, I'd be thinking, okay, I would do some more research in that industry, maybe just to say, okay, what am I targeting, and kind of prep for that roadmap. Just being in the software vendor's shoes. Because if I know what the user wants, and on top of that, know the regulations, what they have to follow, I can make even more money. So to me, they're missing out. And, when I'm doing these audits, I'm like, wow, you guys could be making a fortune, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm protecting my company. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts as I'm going through these audits as quality, but.
Yep. Agreed. Well, I think we could trash talk more, or does anyone else have any other thoughts or comparisons? I think the conversation we had so far has been really good. If part of the reason for this group is also used for comparison resource. So, if you ever need to vet a vendor or run through some InfoGov challenges, that's what we're here for.
Yes, and to expand on Jack's thing, we are here for each other. And so if you do have any questions about topics or anything else, please reach out to us. There is an ACC forum that you can also post stuff on. So I do check that every once in a while to see what's going on in there. So again, please feel free to use the forum. We can check that as well. One of the topics we're thinking of for next month is looking at a checkpoint in the pandemic, right? So if I recall a couple of years ago when I joined ACC, everything was moving to digital, right? And everybody was like, oh, what do we do? But now, okay, we have the stuff in place. We have some companies have the vaccine documents for retainment and things like that. It's one of the topics I was thinking for February is discuss that. Maybe go over what we've seen currently to date and discuss where everybody else is at. But again, exchanges in April, we have one in that next month, February and March. It's the third Wednesday every month for these meetings and discussions. And sometimes we do different formats, roundtables, guest speakers, case studies. So please feel free if you have any further ideas as well. And I don't know, we have about 12 minutes left. So anybody else would like to share about software vendors? I know Jack and I have been speaking a lot, and Shirley and Dora, but, and thank you, Sue, for sharing. Our fellow partners at Merck.
Yep. No one on the phone is from Amgen, correct?
I don't.
We're not very favorable for them right now, but yeah, they're for some of the
Lisa's on. Lisa, have you anything to say to add? I know you've.
I was trying to avoid saying something non-PC.
Oh, Lisa, come on.
There's good and bad software vendors, right? I mean, so what I ended up having to do, because I get, as you can imagine, deluged with reach outs from vendors. I have a person on my team who actually, so any vendor email anyone in my team or my manager receives gets sent to one person in my team with a subject that gets altered to say vendor. Then those are collected, and every 3 months we go through all those and we say, thanks, but no thanks, or yes, we're interested in your product. And then if you're really lucky, we say we want to do a demo. And then if you're really, really lucky, we say we want to do proof of concept with you. So that's how we handle our vendor stuff. Totally agree about the roadmap comments. It has gotten much harder to understand. In particular, someone else had mentioned about the mergers or the acquisitions of the different firms of each other. My observation has been people are trying to build end-to-end platforms now where they have a forensic piece, a collections piece, a review piece, a production piece, and then analytics and or dashboarding tied in. I'm not a fan of this because what I'd always appreciated is I could always pick the best of any particular type of product. And as long as it had APIs or integrations, then I could use it. So I'm a little frustrated now because I was literally having a conversation this week about, oh yeah, who bought this product and who bought this product, and they're now owned by different companies in integrated platforms. So I have to take 75% crap to get the 25% great tool that I really wanted. Yeah, so I'm not exactly thrilled with how things are going.
The week is almost over.
Yeah.
Oh.
And IG's tough because it's interesting, the discussion about retention period. So we have a retention schedule. We go by whether or not something's a record. We also talk about what's the source version. So one of the things I'll point out to people is if you look at like Slack or even email, if you attach something to a Slack conversation or an email, that does not necessarily make it a record that will say, look, where's the original copy that's sitting on SharePoint, or if it's on your laptop, well, then let's focus on keeping that copy so I don't have to keep 10 bajillion years of Slack. So
Sure.
we look at stuff like just, try to think about the smartest place to actually keep the record version of an item. But there's a challenge like with Slack, the way it's designed by default is retention is permanent, because that's what the developers and engineers want, because they want to be able to go back 15 years from now and look at some great idea they had 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's very, a lot of these new platforms are very contrary to what we do in the IG world, which is proving to be job security.
Yes.
So no comment.
It's business value or IT value.
Yes.
No, each to.
Thank you for sharing, Lisa.
Sure.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can probably end unless anyone has any closing thoughts. Gary, closing thoughts from you?
Closing thoughts from me. Well, I mean, I think software vendors, it's going to be a challenge. The landscape has changed with the pandemic. You have, as Lisa mentioned, retention to think about. I mentioned risk impacts, knowing process versus technology. In my thoughts, the process should come first, then the technology. Sometimes it's thought the other way around. The technology comes first, then the process. So to me, you got to think what's important for your stakeholders that you're supporting and yourself when it comes to the RFPs, and think about regulation requirements as well. I mean, I think that's the big thing. And just know it's not easy. I think everyone else is going through the same thing and frustration. So it's not going to be an easy thing to go through.
Agreed. I think vendors should provide online drinking services for us. We have to put up with them.
Virtual.
Virtual, of course, virtual. But nevertheless, I agree. We're here. I think that the argument is going to stay the same. The challenges are going to stay the same, but at least we are getting better at answering questions. And I'm hoping that one day clients will be able to have more forums to really discuss like how to really get to the meat of something. Is it really worthwhile? And then these forums will really go back to the providers, and we'll get those roadmaps back again and say, no, we want this. Just develop this. We don't want to pay for this. We want this. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. We don't need every bell and whistle. So
yeah, and I do think I did attend in the past some software vendor roundtables, and I think those vendors at least try to listen to what the user wants and hopefully gets their feedback from the user, so that when they do go through some of these RFPs, they know what to expect, and to know what the users want. So hopefully they get more of that instead of just doing the demo of the software, actually listening to the feedback.
great.
Anybody else? I know we have 4 minutes left, but I just want to say thank you everyone for attending, and I hope this topic was a good one to discuss. I think it does have an impact on everyone that's attended this call. So, if you do have any further questions, please do reach out, or if you want to discuss further, we can. As I mentioned, our next meeting is in February, the third Wednesday. We'll probably be talking about mostly around the pandemic checkpoint, where we're at with information governance and discovery, with some of the documentation and things that are going on with COVID, et cetera. But if there's any other topics you'd like to discuss in March, we still have that open. And April is the exchange. So just want to keep you online for 2022 timelines. And then after exchange, we'll go from there. We'll probably discuss what hopefully in Chicago, as KJ said, in person, but we'll have to see that. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day. And thank you, Jack, for starting the topical.
No problem. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.